Okay, so hello and welcome everyone. In this section of the course, we are going to be learning all about databases and how we can connect to them using our Node.js app. In this lecture, we'll be talking about databases. Then we'll talk about two major types of database, which is the SQL and NoSQL databases. Then we'll discuss some of the popular SQL and NoSQL based systems. And then we'll come to this database which we will be using and learning in this course, which is MongoDB. So what is a database? Well, database is a systematic collection of data. Databases support storage and manipulation of data, and it makes data management easy. Now, suppose you book a movie, alright? So, what you're going to tell your movie hall is that you've booked a movie at some particular time, and you'll provide some data to the movie hall that which movie you want to watch, at what time do you want to watch, what your name is, how many people are going to watch along with you, what is the seat number and everything. So all of that has to be stored somewhere. So now you can't store everything in your backend server, right? So it has to be stored somewhere. That is where database comes in. Database is where all the information is stored. So whenever a person from the front end, he contacts the backend, what the backend does is it contacts the database and it gets the data from the database and gives it either back to the front end, or if the front end wants to post some data to the database, it tells the server that hey, you can now put this particular data in this particular format in the database, and the backend server, your API, actually does that. So moving on, well, there are two types of database, the SQL and NoSQL database. Well, SQL stands for structured query language, and NoSQL obviously means not a structured query language. So now we'll jump into what they are and the differences between them. SQL is a relational database management system, and NoSQL is distributed. So what it means is, in SQL, it's very easy to relate two different types of data to each other, whereas in NoSQL, it's not that easy to relate them, but it's more of distributed. Now coming back to SQL, well, SQL is vertically scalable. So what actually happens in SQL is that data is stored in forms of tables, alright? So it's very easy to count how many number of rows there are in the table and stuff like that. So it's very scalable that way. But NoSQL, well, NoSQL might not be very scalable when it comes to vertically, but it's very horizontally scalable because of the fact that in NoSQL there's no schema. The schema is very dynamic and it's very good for hierarchical data. So what you can do is you can store the properties of one thing in like an array or in an object, and it's very easy for you to store a lot of information about one particular thing. Well, the drawback of NoSQL is that it cannot be used for very complex sort of queries, whereas SQL is very good for complex queries. Now, there are a lot of SQL based systems which a lot of big companies use, like PostgreSQL, MySQL, MariaDB, and Microsoft SQL Server. There are plenty of SQL systems other than these four, and a lot of companies use a lot of them. And if you want to get a proper knowledge about databases and like how many types of databases are there, you can go to this link, landscape.cncf.io. I've put the link in the resources section of this video, and I'm sure you should check that out. Now coming to NoSQL systems, where there are a lot of NoSQL systems like MongoDB, Redis, Couchbase, Cassandra, and so many more, like IBM Cloud Server, and the list is endless. Now MongoDB, we are going to be using MongoDB for this particular course. So MongoDB is a document-oriented NoSQL database which is used for data storage, of course. And in MongoDB, the data is not stored in rows and columns like in SQL, but in MongoDB, the data is stored in the form of JSON or JavaScript object notation. We talked a lot about it in our last section, and since it is very easy to send and receive JSON data from Node.js, because Node.js is using JavaScript and JSON literally says JavaScript object notation, that's why we are going to be using MongoDB. But that is not the only reason why we are going to be using MongoDB actually. Well, there are plenty of reasons to use MongoDB. MongoDB reduces operation overhead up to 95%, so you don't have to write very complex queries and all that. MongoDB has a lot of functions inbuilt in it with its aggregation framework, from which you can perform really, intensive queries in a short period of time. And it has a very flexible architecture. The storage, the way you can, since you store data in the form of JSON, it is very easy to store very complex formatted data in it. You can store data inside another data or something like that. It's very hierarchical, it's very easy, and its writing performance is very good. So you want to write something to the database from the server, it's very easy to do bulk operations and stuff like that. And of course, MongoDB has a very large community. There's a lot of people around MongoDB, and whenever you're facing a problem regarding MongoDB, well, all you can do is just Google it and you will find someone with the same problem who has actually solved it. So this community is very good, and that is why we'll be using MongoDB in this course. So as you can see, I've listed out why we are going to be using MongoDB. And as I discussed earlier, it has a lot of commercial support, it is very easy for scaling, and it never almost fails. It always works. So thank you for watching this video. In the next video, we're going to be actually using MongoDB in our system, in our Node.js app. So thank you for watching this video, and hope to see you in the next video.